ZHANG Zhilei versus Deontay Wilder. It all goes down in a matter of hours. I'll tell you my bias up front. I have Zhang winning this by KO. And quite frankly, my other bias is I truly feel that Deontay Wilder should just stop fighting altogether after witnessing his performance versus Joseph Parker. I felt that Deontay, not only the fact that he lost the fight, but how he lost. He just displayed so many scary flaws that I fear for his safety in the ring, just from this point forward. But regardless, let's break down Deontay Wilder and Zhilei Zhang as individual fighters, and then let's take a look at how they match up. So I'll start with Wilder. So Wilder's strong points, well, number one, of course, is his incredibly powerful right hand, as Petty Atlas decided to call it, the eraser. Unfortunately, at this point, it doesn't erase all the fundamental flaws that Deontay has, but yet it's still the major part of his arsenal. Now, Wilder seems to be able to generate that incredible power for his right hand simply by using a lot of torque from the waist up. I don't feel like Deontay drives it from the balls of his feet on the canvas. It's just all upper body, and it's kind of like his own individual patented right hand. I don't think that's something you'd want to try to teach anybody else, because it's very individual to Deontay. That said, as unconventional as that right hand might be, it has been the undoing of a number of his foes. So we do have to give him credit for that right hand. Now, the second biggest asset I would say that he has is actually his faith in his right hand, and knowing that he has that one punch KO power in that right hand. Faith can carry you a long way in a fight, especially if he gets into deep water, as we say, or if he gets himself into a little bit of trouble. If he can just remind himself, hey, look, just hang in there. I know I still got this big right hand. If I can just land it, I might be able to turn this around. And so knowing that you've got big guns in your arsenal, it's something that's can help you mentally when you get into the thick of things. So now, the third biggest asset I think Deontay has is, at this point, I think it's his faith in his corner. I'm assuming he has 100% faith in Malik Scott, the trainers he's used since firing Mark Breland as a trainer. So I'm going to assume that Deontay's going to have both Malik Scott and his original trainer back from the amateur days. Is it not Diaz, J. Dees, Deas, his original trainer from back when he was amateur. I think, Deontay kept Jay on simply because of that sort of bond and that loyalty, and I think that's really important to Deontay, to have sort of that loyalty in his corner, because rightfully or wrongfully, he apparently felt betrayed by Mark Breland. Now, that's a whole separate conversation about whether that's a reality-based assessment of Mark Breland. I don't think it is, but the point is really more that Deontay has faith in his corner. Now, again, rightfully or wrongfully, but the point is, when a fighter has faith in their corner, at least they should be willing to listen to their corner should they get themselves into, as we say again, deep waters, or get themselves into a bit of a tight spot. Hopefully that corner can and will impart the right advice to their fighter, and the fighter will listen. If they don't trust their corner, that's not going to happen. If they have 100% faith in the corner, they might at least try to execute whatever the corner asks them to do in those crucial moments. They may not be able to, but at least there's a possibility that they'll be able to execute whatever's asked of them. Let's take a look at some of the flaws I think that Deontay Wilder displays. Now I'm just gonna go over 3. Unfortunately, I feel like Deontay is just one of those very fundamentally flawed fighters, and he's, not to take away from the success he's had, but it was all built on a weak foundation, and I think Mark Breland was able to sort of accept Deontay's flaws and then sort of work around it to come up with a game plan and sort of techniques and strategies to help him make the most of what he does have, which is, of course, again, that big right hand. Okay, however, let's look at a few other components. So Wilder does not have an effective jab. His jab is thrown with his elbow straight out, and it becomes almost like a sort of more of a flicking kind of backhand than an actual spear-like jab. So it's almost like just kind of a distractor that he throws out there to throw something out there to see if his opponent will react. And then, of course, throughout the fight, Deontay's looking to land that huge right hand. That's his bread and butter punch. But unfortunately for him, he doesn't have a good solid variety of jabs to set up that right hand. The other issue is that he really loads up on that right hand, so it's very much a telegraphed punch. Now, granted, in a lot of cases, whether you know that it's coming or not, it doesn't matter, because you just can't get out of it, and when it lands, it's lights out for his opponent. So if you notice from a lot of if you take a look at some of his KOs, Deontay's able to knock out his opponent with that right hand because he throws it when they're throwing. He punches with them, and of course when he's able to connect before they are, they get that KO. I think Helenius was the perfect example. It looked like to me like Helenius went down to the body and then was trying to come upstairs with the right hand, but he left himself, Helenius was trying to come back upstairs with a right hand of his own, left himself wide open, and Deontay just annihilated him with a short right. So that said, I think particularly because this is a righty-lefty matchup, the fact that Deontay's right hand is more telegraphed is a negative in this case. I said I was only going to mention 3. I think I'm going to mention 4 things I'm concerned about for Deontay. Third thing is his footwork. So in most of his previous fights, he just kind of takes small steps and walks around the ring, which suits his style just fine because he does need his feet to be stable. He needs to have his feet planted in order to throw his big right hand. And again, that's because he's just mostly using torque from his waist upward. Take a look at Deontay's physique. He has no leg muscles at all. It's kind of disproportionate. It's like he's got 2 toothpicks with a couple of green peas stuck on them for knees. Kind of alarming lack of lower body development for a world-class athlete. Now, it's okay, so am I hating on him because he has skinny legs? No, it's not so much that. It's the disproportionality of it. It's just he's got a very well-developed upper body, but like a nothing lower body. So what does that mean? It means he can't generate power from the canvas up. He can't make use of, as some people would call it, his posterior chain, from his feet through his legs, hips, lower back, and up and out through his fist. That's not there. So he's generating all this power just from the torque from his waist upwards. So the issue here is now, in the last few fights, I've noticed that they've decided, or Deontay decided, or that they're gonna try to make him move around more, do all this sort of lateral movement. And the problem there is, well, one, it's sort of out of character for Deontay, because he's not a boxer, he's a puncher, a one-punch puncher. And by having him try to move his feet around, that takes away from his greatest offensive asset, right? Because he doesn't, you know, since that was never part of his sort of character or individual sort of style. I hate to use the word style for fighters, but you know, the notion of moving around on his feet and then being instantaneously able to kind of plant and throw. I mean, there are fighters that can do that. Witness Vasily Lomachenko. He's in constant motion, but when he can make that instantaneous like shift, so he's like got enough plantedness to throw a really hard punch off of a pivot, off of a turn, off of a like pendulum step. But in any case, that's not something that Wilder has grown up doing, or it's not really part of his style. He needs to be able to like just plant his feet and load up on that right and hopefully land it. So I'm not sure why Team Wilder decided that he should start trying to move around the ring laterally, but I don't think that's gonna help him at all with Zhilei Zhang. Fourth thing that I'm concerned about for Deontay is his lack of head movement, a lack of effective head movement. Now, this became crystal clear in his fight with Joseph Parker. It was scary to see Deontay just kind of lean back with his chin up and his arms wide out, especially when Parker pressured him and caught him in the corner. I mean, it was just, Parker just started unloading with right hand, left hooks, and you know, it was alarming to me that Deontay didn't at least instinctively sort of lean forward and shell up with a double high guard. You know, he's in no position to fire back a counterpunch from that position because he can't see, but at least he's not leaning back and leaving his head just wide open to take more punishment. As I mentioned in the previous video, if I was ever to see a young person do that in the gym and in preparation to make their amateur debut, I would tell them, yeah, no, we got a lot to work on. We're not ready for an amateur fight yet. You know, we got to get that instinct. We got to get that defensive instinct. When you feel like you're in trouble, you know, at least shell up. I mean, and then we can try to work it from there, where you have more of an active guard and eyeballs on your opponent, so you can weave out, step, pivot out, do something, but get yourself out of trouble. Okay, so now that said, I did take a look back at some of Wilder's previous fights and noticed that this whole thing of him just avoiding punches by moving his head back has always been there. It's just that he was able to get away with that in his earlier fights because he could rely on his innate athleticism. So when he do that, it's not the best way to avoid a punch, right? Moving straight back with your chin up, but he'd do it only for an instant, and then he'd be repositioned, and his eyes were always on his opponent, so he'd be repositioned, ready to come back with a counter shot. But unfortunately for Deontay, I think he took so much punishment versus Fury and then versus Parker that some of his reaction time and that athleticism has been diminished. So again, you know, it's like you can get away with certain things up until a point, and then you just can't get away with them anymore. And this is one of those cases where since Deontay was never forced to learn how to use other defensive skills, such as slipping a punch either to his right or to his left, or maybe even weaving under punches, he's at a loss at this point in his career, where he's facing world-class competition and yet has basically sub-amateur fundamentals in some cases. Okay, so I'm really going in hard on Deontay Wilder, but let's switch over to Zhilei Zhang for a moment, or ZHANG Zhilei. So, what are Zhang's assets? Well, in terms of jab, I'm gonna sort of blend this into one: his jab and his guard. He has a variety of both. So again, Zhang being the southpaw, a lot of times, southpaw righty matchups, you're going to get into the battle of the jabs. And Zhang has not only a variety of jabs, he works off a couple different guards. So I notice that often in the beginning of the fight, he'll adopt sort of that Eastern European guard, where he would have his rear hand, his left hand close to his chin, and his right arm, his lead arm, kind of extended and up, with the chin tucked. It's very common for Eastern European, and a lot of the Cuban amateurs do that too. And then so what Zhang will do is just lots of motion with that lead hand, almost like a distractor. It's a semi-distraction, semi-probing, sort of seeing what your opponent will do. So if you notice, he sometimes he'll paw with it, sometimes he'll just move it in small circles, but that's a very typical sort of Eastern European style, to play around with that lead hand. Again, off of that very sort of Eastern European sideways guard. And then later on in the fight, I noticed that Zhilei will then kind of switch to a double high guard and use a little more of throw less volume with that lead hand and make them more stabbing, making more sort of counter jab. Maybe he's trying to jab over top his opponent's jab. But my point here is that Zhilei does have an effective jab. He has a variety of jabs, and he knows how to use these off of different guards. So that's the level of sophistication we'd expect from a world-class professional boxer. Second thing that Zhilei does well is he's got a wonderful straight left. It's nice and short. He's very loose when he throws it, so it's not telegraphed at all. He doesn't load up on it, and because of that, because he's so relaxed, it can come it's a very sharp straight left, and it's very short, and it's very effective, as we've seen. So I think that's one of his greatest assets. Third thing that I think is a great asset for ZHANG Zhilei is that he can fight on the inside, which is a little bit surprising for such a big man. Take a look at his fight versus Filip Hrgović, which he lost a decision to, somewhat controversially. But in that fight, Zhilei really surprised me because he was able to throw lots of nice, tight uppercuts on the inside. Nice, straight uppercuts. Really an asset for him. Now, will he be able to use that versus Wilder? That may or may not come into play, but the point being that at least we know that Zhang knows that he can fight on the inside. If he needs to, he has that in his toolbox. Okay, so those are three assets Zhang has. Let's take a look at the question marks for Zhang. And the thing is, these are all kind of blended into one because it's hard to say what exactly the cause is, but I think one question mark for sure is conditioning, because it seems in more than a few of his fights, Zhang is kind of petered out towards the later rounds, and so that now there could be a couple of reasons for that, but one is most definitely conditioning. It's like, buddy, did you put in the rounds? Did you do enough road work? All of the above. We could say, is it his age? Well, the point is, okay, if you are up in age, then you know even more that what you've had longer time in the game. You know darn well what you should be doing. So you can't play this off as, I'm young and stupid, I just didn't know. No, you know darn well what you're supposed to do. So if you chose not to get yourself in the correct conditioning, then that's 1,000% on you. It's not even on your trainer. They shouldn't have to tell you. So there's that, the conditioning aspect. Then the second part that kind of goes along with that is the sense of urgency, because there are points, again, in his last fight, in his fight versus Parker, for example. I'll assume that Zhang thought he was ahead because he dropped Parker twice, but as I broke it down in that video, if you look at the math after the 8th, it's still urgent for him to win all 4 final rounds if he wants to come away with the win with certainty. But there just didn't seem to be that sense of urgency in Zhang's performance in the closing rounds. I understand that his corner was asking him to pour it on, but again, what is that sort of inability to summon up, a sense of urgency within oneself? Is that due to the lack of conditioning, or is that just a mental aspect? Again, only Zhang knows the answer to that one. And then the third thing that's not necessarily a weakness, but it's just something that goes along with him being such a big man who stands fairly square, is his body is there as a target, especially for a smaller heavyweight, right? Which is what Parker used as part of his strategy, for sure. It was to level change and do those jabs to the body, work the body punches. So it's not necessarily a weakness. It's just a fact that, because Zhang is that much bigger and he stands square, more square than, say, someone like Carlos Ortiz, or not, was it Carlos Ortiz? Luis Ortiz, sorry, the other heavyweight. It's just he's got that big midsection target that's there for his opponent to target, and then that can also add to his sort of decreased output in the later rounds. So that's really the issue, right? What is the cause of his decreased output in the later rounds? Again, only he and his camp know, but it could be any one of those 3 things: lack of conditioning, lack of sort of mental urgency, and getting hit to the body a lot. Could be one of the 3, could be all 3 combined, but that's something that hopefully Zhang has figured out in this last camp and addressed with his trainers. Okay, so now let's look at how Zhang and Wilder match up. Classic righty-lefty matchup, right? With Deontay being the by far smaller heavyweight in this case, right? He came in at 200 and change, or 200 and I think 15, and Zhang is like 280. It's a considerable size difference, or at least weight difference, right? Now, in terms of the jab, Zhang will win the battle of the jabs, as we say, because his right hand lead, I think, will wind up being far more effective in landing than Wilder's really ineffective sort of elbow out, back fist type slappy non-jab, really. So I just see Zhang winning that battle of the jabs with no problem, pretty much. And then here's the thing, right? Once Zhang gets comfortable with his jab, his straight left is right there. Once he knows he's got Deontay at the end of his jab, he can just let go with that straight left. Now, the thing is, Zhang also will sometimes just throw the straight left first, start with the straight left. And that's a classic thing in a righty-lefty matchup. it's okay for the orthodox fighter to throw their reverse punch. It's okay for the southpaw to throw their reverse punch, right? Because the way the bodies are lined up, both fighters are open for that reverse punch. So it's just a question of who can land the more effective reverse punch. And again, in this case, I think Zhang wins that battle because he doesn't load up, because he throws his straight left far more sharper and quicker than Deontay throws his more loaded up hard right. Finally, on the inside, well, again, we know Zhang can fight on the inside. We also know Deontay Wilder can't fight on the inside, which is why he will just clinch and hold. And unfortunately, so let's address Deontay and his camp and his regiment. Unfortunately for him, he just he hasn't had enough time since the Parker fight to address even just one of these flaws. There's no way you're going to learn how to fight on the inside in one camp. There's no way you're going to learn how to jab effectively in one camp. No way you're going to learn how to slip punches or roll under punches or weave under punches in one camp. And it would basically be a mistake to try to get your fighter to do that, because they'd be half-baked with it and just even more open if they're going to try these new movements. So I'm kind of concerned for Deontay in this matchup. I also feel that if he adopts this whole notion that he's going to float like a butterfly around the ring and then sting Zhang with his straight right, I think that's a mistake. I think Zhang can just easily walk him down, cut off the ring, and then Deontay will be right there for him. Worst case scenario is Zhang gets Wilder caught in the corner or on the ropes, and then it's the same thing as Joseph Parker did. Deontay's just his reflexes are so programmed for him to just lean his head back and at this point open up his arms that he's just inviting Zhang to knock him out. No, in all honesty, I mean, I'm trying to find a way for Wilder to win, and of course that would have to be with his right hand, and it would have to be, I think, very early on in the fight. I think it's just going to be hard for him as the fight goes on. It's always much harder for the smaller person to stave off somebody that's that much bigger than you, like 70 pounds heavier. That's about Zhang is about 130% bigger than Wilder, and that's a considerable size difference for Wilder to keep him off. Anytime you're the smaller person trying to keep a bigger person off you, it's just a huge expenditure of energy, and it's very draining. So, time as the fight wears on, in a sense, time favors Zhang as long as he doesn't peter out towards the very end. But I honestly think in this case the outcome will be Zhang winning by a KO within 8 rounds, maybe even within 6. But I do hope Deontay Wilder just doesn't get hurt too badly. I hope his corner has the humanity to stop the fight, even though he's done this whole I want to go out on my shield type deal, and that's the reason he fired Mark Breland. But I do hope Deontay's corner saves him if he's taken a beating like he did from Joseph Parker. If somebody of Zhang's size lands on him the way Parker landed on him, we're talking permanent damage. And for what? At this point, Wilder's been to the mountaintop. I assume he's well taken care of in terms of his finances, so there's really no need for him to subject himself to this, because no amount of money is going to be able to buy back his health if he undergoes serious damage in this fight. And in fact, hopefully it's not already too late, but, you know, why subject him to any more damage? So finally, I will close with one final point with Deontay Wilder is his corner, Malik Scott. Now, in full disclosure, I mean, I know Malik. I think he's a great human being. He's a great person. He's intelligent. He knows boxing. He's a good, decent, humane person. But now here's the big but. I'll assume you guys know that Wilder and Malik fought each other a while back, and the result was, Wilder knocked Malik out in the first round. So here's my question, because this is a mano a mano thing, right? I'll leave this open to all the men that are listening. How much respect does Wilder, or how much respect does a man have for another man if he knocked them the heck out? And now that other man that he knocked the heck out is in charge of telling him what to do. I don't quite know how that dynamic works, because I'm not a dude, right? Like, I can't speak to that, but maybe some of you guys can. Just how much of that power play is still there, like, how much is Deontay really willing to put himself up under a guy he knocked the heck out in one round, like, and how much does Malik feel that he can really clamp down on Deontay, because Deontay knocked him the heck out? I'll leave that for you guys to address in the comments. But how do you guys see this fight going? Do you have Zhang winning? Do you have Wilder winning? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and thank you very much for listening.